Hey guys, Randy Potato here with another Darkest Dungeon 2 guide. Today we will cover the new Cultist trinkets from the latest Trinket overall update. It's important to note that all these trinkets are only usable if you also have the otherwise unusable Dark Impulse trinket equipped, meaning you need to get the value of true trinkets out of one to be playable. Let's start with Cruel Intent. Cruel Intent is a high-risk, high-reward trinket which gives your hero 2 blind tokens at the start of every turn, but awarding you a plus 66% chance to crit, assuming your hero stays blinded. The very definition of high risk, high reward, this trinket is an instant equip if you have a leper, since he can automatically negate the debuff with combo, essentially making this a flat plus 66% crit for true trinket slots. For all other heroes, this is more mixed to bad. On a damage dealer, you're doing less average damage, since crit is not guaranteed in most scenarios, and the damage is less predictable. You do receive more of the crit stress heals as a reward. For dot dealers, it's strictly worse on average, getting the more sporadic crit 5 round dot instead of the guaranteed 6 dot for 2 attacks. It's slightly boosted against the Act 2 boss, who regularly blinds you anyways, along with other small edge cases. The big downside, as noted in the intro, is you're using 2 trinket slots for an RNG effect that on average makes you weaker. Great pickup for leper, trash in most other scenarios. Hardened Heart makes you invulnerable to resistible dot attacks, and you take a flat 2 damage instead per resist. This is a significant reduction in overall damage taken, and you face less deathblow checks being invulnerable to most dots. While there are a variety of enemies that do apply dots, and the Act 2 Ordained bonus includes dot damage, this still ends up a somewhat niche trinket, especially for 2 slots. One of the big disadvantages is the Act 2 boss doesn't apply dots at all, making this irrelevant in the most important fight in the game as of this update. It's very much a situational trinket. Equip before going into a creature den, or a heavy dot region like the Fodder, or going into cultist battles, while leaving off your hero in other scenarios. The main issue with situational trinkets is inventory space, and this requires 2 slots. While even at its most effective, it's a very reactionary and defensive trinket, rather than a pairing with a bit more ambition. Overall, a no real downside trinket with strong defensive bonuses, but not a fantastic use of your 2 trinket slots. Idle Thought is an aggressive trinket, giving you plus 100% damage at combat start, and whittling that down 30% per round until you're doing 0. This trinket can be quite useful in getting you through standard road and node fights without any damage or stress, allowing you to one-hit nuke enemies. It also has uses against certain bosses that are best handled with a rush of front-load damage, like the General, Leviathan, and Guardian. Theoretically, against all bosses it can be useful, allowing you to set up your strength, crit, and vuln tokens for the early rounds to get maximal effect from the trinket, and then let your hero transition to a different role like tank and late combat. While there are basically no downsides to using this trinket in standard combats, it ends up on average being weak in the toughest boss battles, specifically against the Act 2 boss. Against this boss, you want to play much more of a setup game, getting your heroes appropriately buffed, or your dots in place before you nuke the Psy below its various HP thresholds. Here, you need your hero with Idle Thought to front-load all their damage, and then have your other 3 heroes try to combat the Psy below threshold, while your primary damage dealer becomes increasingly useless. This is, in my opinion, the wrong way to win this fight. So if you want to use the trinket effectively, you'll need to keep 2 spare trinkets in your inventory for the final battle. Another fine situational equip, but nothing to go out of your way to get. Jealous Whisper is a movement-based trinket that especially shines in a Jester party. It gives you a positive token whenever you move yourself, and when a friendly skill moves you, example Battle Ballad, you receive 2 positive tokens. Harsh downside is when an enemy moves you, all your positive tokens are destroyed and you gain stress. There are a plethora of heroes who live off movement-based skills, and giving them each a free token each turn is extremely powerful. In a Battle Ballad comp with, say, a Highwayman, this trinket can become deadly and borderline OP. While there are plenty of enemy movement skills as well, the downside is not as game-breaking as the upside. The Act 2 boss only has one, somewhat rare movement ability that can potentially be negated by the positive tokens you accumulate. All in all, a very powerful trinket that remains strong from the road battles all the way to the end of the act, as long as you have one of the handful of movement-based heroes, and in my opinion, one of the stronger cultist trinkets. Lockjaw is for your dot-based heroes, giving you an incredible plus 66% dot application chance for bleed, blight, and burn, while removing your debuff application entirely. While the numbers seem impressive, for For a dot comp to properly scale, you want to be equipping any one of the new various trinkets that increase dot damage and duration, rather than wasting 2 slots to near guarantee application. You're never going to kill the Act boss by counting exclusively on a base Noxious Blast or Poison Darts, and while a guaranteed upgraded Orphan Firefly sounds nice, there are a plethora of better scaling trinkets that can push you from a guaranteed 7x3 to a potential 20x5 or more. The opportunity cost is just too high for this to be anything more than a transitory trinket while you hunt for something that scales. Misstep is a simple trinket that turns your tank into an unkillable behemoth. Plus 75% HP in exchange for minus 50% damage gives basically any tank you slap this on at least 100 HP. It also is strong on dot-based characters like PD or Runaway, or buff-debuff bots like certain Jester or Cultist builds. But with percentage-based scaling, this works best on a tank that you don't rely on for damage, such as Poet Leper, Sergeant Man-at-Arms, or Carcass Hellion. Taunts are of course mandatory in making sure the HP is actually being used, and some form of stress healing is mandatory to keep the meltdowns from neutralizing your HP buff, which thankfully all 3 tank classes have, although I still recommend pairing this with Mineral Spring Water. For a pure tank class, this is one of the strongest trinkets in the game, but for any tank that doubles as a damage dealer, or alternative hero as I discussed earlier, the opportunity cost and downside can make this a transitional trinket pair. Overall, sky high potential, but somewhat niche. Selfish Motivation is a unique trinket, awarding plus 15% damage per negative token, while giving you a negative token at every turn start. This is a potential powerhouse on your tanks, since Taunt is a negative token that you can self-generate. This, like Cruel Intent, seems specifically designed as a Leper Giga buff, since he self-blinds, self-taunts, and can ignore blind if you happen to get that particular token at turn start with a trinket. The obvious downside is this trinket can potentially give you weak tokens, entirely negating up to 3 of your negative token boosts. Non-leper heroes can in addition face struggles with applying the damage if they receive blind tokens. This seems best used in Encore comps, allowing you to taunt yourself and then strike. With Hellion specifically, you could toe-to-toe to clear Winded and add 3 negative tokens, and then immediately Encore a Howling End for at least plus 45% damage. Unfortunately, between the niche narrow use cases and the high opportunity cost of Cultist trinkets in general, this trinket will most likely stay on the shelf in the majority of your runs. Sickening Silence is a strange trinket, obliterating your disease resist while allowing you to apply 3 blight to any enemy attacker once you are diseased. On a taunt tank, this can scale pretty well, and is especially strong against the Act boss, allowing you to apply up to 9x3 blight per turn in addition to your normal damage. The significant downside, of course, is you must acquire and live with a disease in order to activate this. It's also fairly pedestrian in most normal combats, and in fights that don't have multiple actions per round, like the General. And you only get full use of this with a taunt tank. It looks better to me than it did on first glance solely because of the boss potential, and especially if your tank is a non-damage tank that benefits less from the majority of trinkets in the game, but is still fairly risky and fairly niche, especially at this opportunity cost. Silent Treatment is a high upside, high downside trinket that gives you a 66% chance to be stealthed at round start, and assuming you are stealthed, gives you a flat 50% crit boost, while doubling your damage taken when out of stealth. While on first glance this seems like an item perfectly fit for a Nightsworn Grave Robber, and really it is, it has multiple use cases. The additional damage taken component makes this scary for a fast character, and can be more deftly used by slower damage dealers like the Hellion, or especially the Leper, who strongly benefits from crit because of his wide damage range. While this is a powerful all-around trinket in road and most boss combats alike, it is severely weakened against the Psy, as he has a guaranteed round-end AoE hit that will always smack you for double damage. So you either need high natural HP, or a way to generate dodge and block tokens to keep your hero alive. The very definition of high risk, high reward, this trinket can nuke your way through most of the game, but it's probably best taken off before the Act 2 finale if you don't want your hero to find an early end. Snap Judgement is arguably the weakest Cultist trinket in the game in my opinion. Every round you are given a speedy token and plus 10 speed, virtually guaranteeing you act first in every round, but after auto-attacking enemies. The hefty downside is a minus 75% reduction in healing received, making said hero a very soft target. While acting first has incredible benefits, just the base opportunity cost of using 2 trinket slots for this honor, when so many speed buff in items are available, makes this already seem terrible. Add in the fact that your hero is now practically unhealable, and it makes this low-medium upside trinket into practically unplayable. Spoken Sharply grants you a heal of 3 on every hit, in exchange for minus 50% max HP. This is a pretty mediocre trinket, providing a small amount of sustain per turn, most notably with Riposte, in exchange for a significant max HP debuff. Even as a solo trinket, this probably wouldn't even break even overall, much less with the 2-slot opportunity cost. I struggle to think of a scenario where I would want this trinket. I guess it can pick you up off death's door, but that's a steep opportunity cost to pay for a niche scenario. Low upside, high downside trinket makes this unequipable in most scenarios. Temptation is, in my opinion, the strongest cultist trinket, and arguably the strongest trinket in the game. 50% of the time, it grants you an extra turn, in exchange for minus 50% death blow res. This downside may scare newer or more cautious players, but with this power increase you should be getting to death's door far less often. In addition, strong relationships and death blow res in items can almost entirely mitigate this debuff. There's not much to say about this trinket. It is universally good in all combats and on all heroes, and is an auto-equip whenever you get it. Hopefully it receives a nerf, because as fun as it is, it's a bit boring compared to other new trinkets with almost pure upside and negligible and counterable downside. Finally, Wounding Words grants an impressive plus 50% damage, but costs you minus 50% HP and minus 10 speed. I feel like the reward here just does not match the downside. There are a plethora of damage and damage adjacent trinkets in this new update that can get you near plus 50% without having to lose half your health. The speed nerf is annoying but manageable, while losing this much max health can completely erase the benefit by forcing you to spend extra healing and protective actions, and nerfed completely by giving you weak tokens on death's door, which will happen much more often now. Really only usable on a tank, either with extra HP like Vanguard Man-at-Arms or Ravager Hellion, or with a hero that can generate consistent block tokens like Man-at-Arms or Leper. Maybe on a Finale Jester who can generate his own dodge tokens, but that's pushing the line of viability. Even still, the upside is still fairly medium for 2 trinket slots, and is really only equipable in a desperate scenario. Thank you for watching my new Cultist trinket guide. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments your opinion on these new trinkets. I post new videos every Wednesday and Friday, and you can catch me live on Twitch most weekday mornings.